Hey there, and welcome to Two Gay Dads, parenting with pride in a world still catching up. I'm Jason.
And I'm Nathan. We're husbands, dads, and co hosts to this beautiful mess of a podcast.
We're raising our daughter Lizzy. She's smart, she's sassy, and she's currently obsessed with glitter and asking for 5 more minutes at bedtime.
We're here to share the wild ride of parenting as two gay dads in a world that sometimes still asks, who's the mom?
Each week, we'll dive into parenting, stories, life lessons, pop culture, hot takes, and the occasional political rant because let's face it, being queer parents is always political.
We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll probably overshare, and we'll definitely talk about Blippi, Below Deck, and why Lizzy is quite convinced she knows everything.
So grab your coffee, your wine, your emotional support snack, and join us as we raise our kid, raise some eyebrows, and cause some good trouble.
This is Two Gay Dads. Let's get into it.
So I'm sure many of you are wondering, who are we? Why do we decide to do a podcast? Well, I guess getting to know us is a appropriate thing for you all to do. So my name's Jason Bruner Burns. I'm the proud parent of a 5-year-old named Lizzy, and I live with my amazing husband, who sometimes drives me nuts, but I love him anyways, in a little town called Ludington in northern Michigan.
And I'm Nathaniel Bruner Burns, and I grew up in Ohio, so just south of the border, which gets me endless stuff from my husband about being from that rival neighbor to the south. And don't ask him about the sweet corn because I can tell you ours is better.
Absolutely not. Michigan sweet corn is by far the superior sweet corn. But this is a debate that we have in our house all the time. I usually lose because his family all thinks that that wretched corn from Ohio is better. But at least they agree with me that Michigan is the superior school to that school in Columbus.
It's true. I did grow up in a Michigan household.
And I have told you many times that if your father was a Ohio State fan, I'm not sure that this would have worked out.
Anyway, we live in a beautiful town on the shore of Lake Michigan, at least for the moment. We are in the process of relocating back to Washington, D.C., where we lived for 8 years before the 4 wonderful years we've had here.
And that is where we became dads, was after that journey to Washington, D.C. and living there for 8 years. But before that, how did we meet? Well, we met 17 years ago in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale. And I think it's fair to say, Nate, that I was much more interested in you than you were interested in me on that first date.
Well, he certainly had more color in his hair, that's for sure. No, I think that's true. I think that um, I was in a very different place in my life at that point and going through a lot of change. And I wasn't sure I was really looking to meet the guy I'd spend the rest of my life with.
So 4 or 5, I don't know, half a dozen moves later, we're on our way back to Washington, D.C. to continue to fight for justice and equity in all of we do in our normal full-time jobs. We do this just for fun, and we did it because we didn't see a podcast out there that talks about what are the joys and challenges and concerns of being queer parents. And I think for us, the idea of doing something because we also work together that allows us to be creative and spend time intentionally away from work to do something that we can do that just for fun, just for us, I think is really important.
I agree. When we took some convincing, and what Jason brought to me that I think was the most compelling discussion was we need to do something positive together. That we are spending too much time doom scrolling, which I think a lot of people are doing. I've spent far too much time on ChatGPT trying to understand immigration, and I think that that's a very real thing a lot of LGBT parents are going through. But that's a dark place to be and to exist in that. And I think both of us had situations where our mental health was suffering. And Jason said, let's do something creative together. And so I guess it's always better to create than to live in a place of destruction.
Who is our kiddo? So she's this, you heard in the intro, brilliant, sassy 5-year-old. I think every parent probably thinks that their child is the most brilliant and the most sassy, but ours is extra brilliant and extra sassy, at least in my humble opinion, who loves dance. She's in her second year of dance class. She loves to play daddy's assistant golf coach. I'm a former high school golf coach. Did that for several years before moving back. and she is just absolutely the light of my eye.
I agree. Love of my life. Yeah, I think you covered it. I don't really know what I can add to it other than she's just like him. And so now every time that his mother says, I hope that you have one just like me, I'm getting to not only experience that through him, but also like raising one of him. And it's unique.
So, one of our goals of this podcast is just for all of you to see that we are just like any other parent out there. We worry about our kid. We love our kid. We enjoy spending time with our kid. Sometimes we enjoy spending time with our kid. We miss our kid. And we also can't wait to put him to bed. So,
I think
we,
that's every parent.
every parent,
Yes.
every parent, and every parent gets the 5 more minutes, Papa. 5 more minutes.
Starting kindergarten has been the best thing because she went from going to bed at 8 to going to bed at 7. And then when they go to bed at 7, it's like, well, holy crap. Now I have like hours before I go to bed. It's just different. It's great. I love it. I mean, I love her, but I miss her when she goes to bed, but it's nice to be an adult a little bit too.
Until they come up and wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning by climbing into your bed and spend the next 2 hours kicking you.
With her head by my feet and her feet kicking my head.
Kids, what can you do but love them to death? So, as you see, we're just two gay dads, and we're just trying to raise our kid in a world that I'm going to date myself here, but I feel like is sometimes still buffering on equality.
So I did have a funny story, though. I guess it's funny, maybe not. Like a lot of parents, I prefer to do errands alone. But sometimes, we got to take the kid with us. And Jason's was traveling, as we mentioned. Jason travels quite a bit for work. So we were at the store alone, and we were looking at Christmas stuff, I'm the guilty parent. I spoil our child rotten.
Both do. You're not that. You're not.
Well, I'm so much worse. I think it's because I buy all the clothes, and so because of that, I feel like I spoil her. But she saw a pair of very fuzzy earmuffs, and she wanted them desperately. And I said, "No, let's go. I gotta go over and look at at some point, I have to say no, right? Like she's an only child, otherwise, stuff's gonna get real at some point. It's gonna catch up to us." Long story short, we looked at the Christmas stuff. She got the earmuffs and we took them home. So maybe not a funny story, but hopefully one that people can relate with because I feel like everybody, especially like parents of only children, where you're trying not to spoil them rotten, it's tough, man.
We're just all afraid of the tantrum in public, right? Every parent's been there. We've all experienced it. That doesn't make it better in the moment.
That's true. Well, and I mean, I gotta say, like, our kid is pretty amazing. She doesn't really do tantrums, but yeah, it's frightening. I think the other part, though, is like LGBT parents in a small, it can be really tough because you don't always know, like, what people think of you as they're looking at you or observing you. And especially when your kid is running around calling you papa, because I feel like people don't necessarily know what to do with that. Because here where we live, it's still primarily used for grandparents, and there's that, and then the inevitable, and this is something you'll read all the blogs. It always happens. Somebody goes, "Oh, it's dad's day out with the kid," and look,
I
his
hate that.
yeah,
That happens all the time. Well intentioned. It's always well intentioned.
and it's like, "Where's mom?" And it's so tough because I don't, obviously we don't want to raise her in a heteronormative environment, although that's what we've ended up in. And so I think like trying to not do that. And people here are amazing with us about accepting and being welcoming. But it does create a bit of an awkward situation.
Well, speaking of heteronormative, when are we going to understand that it's 2025 and maybe parents shouldn't say mother and father anymore? There are all sorts of different family types out there. You have grandparents raising kids. You have aunts and uncles raising kids. You have LGBTQ parents raising children right now, and the outdated forms to me just they drive me nuts because our kiddo was born in Louisiana, right? And it was a Louisiana to Virginia adoption, and so she's always gonna have all sorts of paperwork. Lord love her if she ever goes for a job where she needs a security clearance because the amount of aliases that she's going to have and 2 social security numbers, aliases, all of this stuff, right? So our kiddo, if she ever needs to request paperwork from the state of Louisiana, she will need to remember that I am mother and Nathan is father. But then, for no reason that we chose, In the federal government's eyes, I am father and Nathan is mother. Like this is just the world that we live in, and I'd be curious. I get a little annoyed if I'm being honest every time I see them, the mother and father. Can't we just say parent one and parent two? And I don't care what your back end of this database says, and the millions of dollars it would cost to change all that coding. I understand that, but the form you give the parent, can't it just say parent one or parent two? Is that too much to ask?
It would also help if I remembered to not fill out the paperwork wrongly when I did it for Louisiana, and then at least it would have been consistent. But yeah, no, we ran up to this when we went to the Social Security Department. We had to get a whole new Social Security number issued, and then apparently they're tied together in a bag. I don't know, but we asked them about like what's the what's the can we like why isn't this changed? We live in 2020 at that point, behind the glass and the masks and all that stuff. And she, who was not a very friendly human, briskly told me that if I had an extra $1 billion laying around, they could take care of that for us, but otherwise, suck it up. So there we are.
Do you remember Lizzie was born in July of 2020, right? So during the heart of the pandemic. So we're dealing with the pandemic. We're dealing with all of this new parent paperwork, and it feels extra complicated because we're LGBTQ parents, right? And we can't just go home with the birth certificate and social security number we got from the hospital. And so, do you remember trying to get Lizzie's social security number in that office in Virginia with the Dropbox where we had to leave all these vital documents? It's just the most. They wanted us to leave our passports and trust like. Listen, I'm not a conspiracy theory, but they tell you don't trust anyone else with your passport. That comes from the federal government, right? That comes from the State Department. Yet the Social Security Administration was, oh, you have to leave your passports with us for some undetermined number of weeks for us to process all of this so that your kiddo can get a Social Security number. It is an experience I think that is unique.
It is indeed. I agree.
So since you've been a parent, it's a little bit of a rough transition. I'm just going to acknowledge it. It's episode one. What's the biggest parenting hack? The biggest thing that you've learned, maybe the best advice, and also like the worst advice that you've gotten as a parent?
The best advice that we got was, and I'm probably stealing his, so watch him scramble. It'll be fun. Children, especially those who are being those early months on bottle only and formula, never need to know that it needs to be warm. And we had a lesbian couple tell us that, and it was a life changer because by never having her like room temperature, obviously, we're not going to give her something cold. But, like, to be able to just get a water bottle out of, the bag and put formula in it, and she was completely content without getting fussy because it was warm, and we tell this to every parent we meet, like, there's just unless you're breastfeeding, and that's a whole other, like, I don't understand any of it, like, bless those that do, like, there's no there's no reason for it, just don't do it, and that was a lifesaver.
You did steal mine, but I mean it is absolutely the truth. It is an unbelievable uh positive heck. There's nothing about formula in the regulations because obviously we're two men. We can't breastfeed, right? So there's nothing in the instructions that say it has to be warm. And so, when you get those little to go packs, and we kept them in both of our vehicles, and you can just throw that in a room temperature bottle of water, shake it up, and give your kid the bottle. That was absolutely a parenting hack. I'll go similar, but slightly different. There are all sorts of gizmos and contraptions that everyone tries to sell you. You get the little bag dispenser for the diaper bag, so you can throw your diapers away when you're out and kind of seal them off. And they're glorified dog poop bags, right? But you put baby in front of it instead of it being 99 cents for a roll of dog poop bag, 18.99 because it says baby in front of it. Finding those, like, alternatives that you can have. The other thing I would say that was really good for us was, when we finally got the, drying rack for the bottles that had the grass in it, the little rubber grass, that actually was really game changing.
To have I thought it was the, like, ridiculous thing when we got it, the wet wipe warmers. Thought this is so kitschy. Why do they need to be warm? I guess not. The trauma of having a cold thing in my butt is not something that I remember from being an infant. But the glorious thing that they do is they weight down the pack. So when you're pulling the if you've ever changed out in public and you don't have anything to hold and you got one diaper on, like one hand on a kid and the other hand is like trying to pull out the wet
You
wipe,
pull out 15 wipes.
and then you're shaking it trying to, okay, it's ridiculous. Having it weighted down and it can only dispense one at a time, game changer.
Also, it's warm on the tush.
I don't care so much. It's not my touche.
Let's talk about bedtime.
Oh boy.
Who's better at bedtime routine, you or me?
I'm better at reading stories. You're better at getting her to calm down.
Let's talk about that. Why do you think you're better, the better story reader?
Because I do voices and,
I try to do voices,
I know it's sad. Poor child. Something for us to talk about in our therapist sessions later.
but your voices are so over the top sometimes. You're
No,
trying
it's
to
just every voice is British, and that's a problem for you. I can't fix that for you. I'm an Anglophile. Deal with it.
it's not about every voice being British. It's about the fact that we're trying to get our kid to go to bed and you're like screaming like you're Queen Elizabeth over there coming back from the dead and you're like, "It's quiet time, Papa."
We did name our child after Queen Elizabeth.
In your mind, we named her after
I
Queen
think that she might
Elizabeth.
take objection to you throwing
So
that
do
name around.
I, but
Speaking of bedtime, and I think a lot of parents have just ended. I know we have. We just ended the literati season or scholastic season in some schools about books, and it's always interesting to see what books are out in the market that are being put out to families from the schools. It's always interesting. You will take those downstairs, and we'll kind of compare to what we have. So we work in education advocacy, so we are surrounded by teachers all the time. And teachers love to give books. And we have an amazing collection for Lizzy, and a lot of them are signed, which is really cool. And some of them are worn out. And, I was thinking about this today, and I went down and I pulled just 3 books off the top of her nightstand because that's where some of her books end up. And I just thought they were interesting, just to kind of, as we think about what books we're exposing our child to, teaching her about privilege and white privilege and just like a broader community and social justice and all of these things we want to teach her. And our daughter was like, what, a week old, and we absconded from the state where we were. Don't tell Mississippi that we left the state to take our child to walk her across Pettus Bridge in Selma.
we technically didn't break the law because we didn't overnight in Alabama, but we learned that afterwards. What we were told is like you can't leave Mississippi while you're in this ICPC process, and if you've adopted a child from across state lines, you know what ICPC is. We can explain that on a future episode. But we thought we couldn't leave the state, but we couldn't be that close to Selma and not walk our kiddo across that bridge.
Actually, just you were in Montgomery recently and brought back some books. I did not pull a Montgomery book out. I did pull 3 though, and I think these are interesting. The first one is The Secret Ingredient by Paul Castle. Paul's a really interesting author. He's a social media personality. His husband is a very attractive violinist. I think shirtless violinist is his name. He's anyway. But Paul is interesting. He is on a journey of losing his sight and being a blind author. He wrote a great book about Pringle and Finn. The book, according to social media, the book did get banned in some places because of its LGBT themes, which is terrible. But it's a really good book. Again, this is The Secret Ingredient. This is the second book. I don't have the first book, but it's a really good one if you're looking for something about a same-sex penguin couple. I think they're penguins who are on a journey to bring joy to other, in some cases, LGBT families of different species. The other one is okay. Well, he has one too, so I guess I'll let him.
I do have one too.
I was on a roll here.
You were
It's our
absolutely
first. It's our first podcast.
you were absolutely on a roll, and you were just gonna keep going
like a semi truck.
right through the stop sign. One of my favorite books right now to read to Lizzie that I think is just amazing is by Chasten Buttigieg. It's called Papa's Coming Home. By the way, all of these books will be linked below in the description if you're watching on YouTube. They'll be linked in the description for the podcast too. Buy all these books. for your kids. They are inclusive, they are representational, and I think for me, this one, not only because I would love for Secretary Pete to be someday President Pete, and this is a story of their family, but more importantly, I travel almost every week for work. And so the idea, and again, while the names are switched because I'm daddy in our household, of the kids and everything they want to go through to welcome Papa back home, it warms my heart because I remember the days, we live about 100 miles from the airport now. But I remember the first days after the pandemic when we would travel out of National Airport in DC and you and Lizzie coming to pick me up and those pictures you have of her holding my hand walking down the hallway in the Great Hall in National Airport. But it's just a really incredible story and book about love and representation and talking about what it's like to be, an LGBTQ family when one of your spouses travel.
Is it my turn again?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I'm not done
I'll
yet.
think
No,
about it.
I'm just kidding. Go
The other one is I Will Be Fierce. This is B. Birdsong's a great book about a girl and her endeavor to be fierce. This one we have actually there are missing pages. It's I think part of that is just a kid. Part of it is I think we've worn it out. But we always tell Lizzie that strong girls are exclamation points and so to stand up strong and tall. And so this is a good one that we've read to her quite a bit. So those are three that I pulled out today that I
of 300 that she
but
may
we have
have
so many
downstairs.
books.
I think this points to the larger discussion around inclusive books and an inclusive world matter. For our kiddo to see families that look like her family represented in the world, it matters, right? But there are people who don't agree with our lifestyle, who don't think that we are capable of being parents. I think they're wrong, but they have those beliefs and they are all over this country trying to take books that show the beautiful diversity that is weaved into the fabric of America and make it a monolith, make it a something that is not representational, something that is not equitable. Just some number, PEN America, who is a organization that works around freedom of literacy and freedom to create. They've also been tracking book bans. In the 2024-2025 school year alone, there were 6,870 instances where books were banned across school districts in America. That's not including public libraries. It's just in schools. And some of these very books that we've just talked about are on that list.
If we're going to talk about this, to talk about how important it is if you're a diversity, progressive minded person to get involved with, um, your local organizations, get involved in your parent teacher organizations. We're still figuring that piece out. I think like a lot of parents, it comes down to time, right? But I was heavily involved with our library here for a while. We have a fantastic library. The Carnegie Library system was designed to be welcoming place of resources to people, and even in this small town, having a library that said no, and I got to be part of some of those conversations and saying, no, we're not gonna let these people come in and ban our books. We're not gonna let these people tell us that members of our community don't deserve to have their stories told. And that's community driven. These people win when you aren't active and you're not engaged and you're not using your voice. So get involved with your library, get involved with your local organization so that you can help ensure that these books, like the stories of, Pringle and Finn and this girl and Fierce and the Buddha, are on shelves for kids for future generations because it matters.
And these boards, whether it's a local library board, like until we moved back to Michigan, I didn't even know library boards were a thing until Nathan started going to the meetings, or your local school boards. These are often meetings that aren't hugely attended. And so sometimes decisions get made with one, two, three, maybe four people in the background and nobody else. And so they are reactionary to a vocal minority that is not representative of all of those who are around us. And so your voice matters. And if you need a story of why your voice matters, the Pentagon just 4 weeks ago tried to ban a whole bunch of books, right? For those who don't understand the way the Pentagon works and why would the Pentagon be banning books? Well, our military families housed all over the world have schools on those military bases. And so they were trying to ban books from libraries that exist within this big Pentagon system until military families spoke up. And so your voice does matter. Your voice can make a difference. You can stop bad stuff from happening.
So, in the vein of talking about media, maybe switching directions slightly, we have been rewatching some these movies and shows with Lizzie, which has been really fun. Lately, we've been watching Full House with the intention that we will go all the way through to Fuller House, which I've never seen. And what's really weird to me. I don't know if you ever watched Full House as a kid. I remember when Full House was on TGIF. That's how old I am. And you're older than me. You just had a different experience, I guess. I don't know. But so I am amazed at how many of the episodes I remember. I haven't watched this show in 30 years, and it still catches me. And I go, "Oh, I remember this episode. I remember when this happened."
Here's why I'm mad at you for getting Lizzie into Full House. Because now she's acting like the cross between Stephanie Tanner from Full House and the Olsen twins a la Michelle. And if I get called dude one more time by my daughter because she's watching it from Full House.
Whatever, bruh. How rude. We're probably going to get snagged on that and have to write royalty checks to somebody, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Who knows? We may be the only people that are ever watching this podcast by this point, so it doesn't really matter.
So when we send Lizzie to bed at 7 o'clock, what are we watching, Daddy?
Well, that's a great thing. It depends on if I'm traveling and I'm watching something on the road or if we're watching things together. But things we're
He has
watching,
terrible taste.
I have amazing, impeccable taste for smut TV.
Smut TV. He's never even seen 50 Shades. I don't think smut TV is the right
That's a
word.
movie, not a TV show.
I don't think smut TV is the right word.
Probably not the right word. But things we're watching right now.
These are not the smut TV ones.
These are not the smut TV. No, these are just things that we will watch together because if we watch them by ourselves, if either of us is traveling, we will get in trouble. The morning show, episode 10, just dropped today. So that gives you a hint of when we're recording this. So that I believe if it follows the formula for the other ones will be the season finale. I don't know if it's a series finale, but I don't know if this one has another season left in it.
I don't know. I'm starting to feel like there's just it can only get so fantastical.
Yeah.
You don't want to run out the clock like they did on House of Cards.
If you've watched the show, no spoilers here. We'll try never to do spoilers here. But Corey can only save his career so many times. I'm a little over the Corey storyline.
Yeah, over your skis there, sir.
Below Deck. You know what? We all love Below Deck.
We watch all of the Below Decks. It is the only reality. Okay, we're not. I don't watch RuPaul. Like we don't watch RuPaul. We don't get into Real Housewives. It is the only what's the word? Reality TV show that we watch.
Although I've been trying to get Lizzie into The Voice.
Okay, he does watch those. I don't watch those either. He does watch those.
I just want her to like have something that's not Full House and that's singing and she dances when people are singing. It's incredible. But we love all the Below Decks. So there's regular Below Deck Med. I specifically like Below Deck Med because I think I cannot talk. I think Captain Sandy is a rock star. And I love the fact that they both have a woman and an LGBTQ person who's the helm of that captainship and just sets a really good example for Lizzie to see that woman. Actually, we don't really watch this with Lizzie, but you understand the drift. Which is your favorite Below Deck? The original Ned sailing or Down Under?
See, I have to go back to the original with Captain Lee. I miss the good old days. And when we lived in Fort Lauderdale, Jason was on the west side of 95. So if you're from South Florida, you know like what I'm talking about. I lived east, so I had like friends in the boating community. I dated a yacht captain or two. So like I love it because I would have I like there's a part of me if I think if our relationship had not picked up, I would have considered going into yachting. I'd have been a stew because I'm a gay boy who likes to decorate and clean. And so I think that I would have probably.
When do you like to clean?
Just because we have a cleaning service once a week, he judges me. So I think I probably would have gone into yachting, and I think Captain Lee is probably would have been a fun captain to work for.
About Below Deck Down Under.
It's because you like the captain.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, good lord. I mean, you know, Below Deck Down Under only available on Peacock, so you gotta have a Peacock subscription, so it's behind that paywall, but, we have a five-year-old, so we have many of the apps.
We have all of the
We have
apps.
all of the apps. Who am I kidding? And the Below Deck Down Under absolutely is my favorite, also because, the other Below Decks, you can only see those ports so many times, and it's the newest one.
That's true. So if we're going from down under to the other place where they speak with a similar accent, Anglophile over here, can we talk about Downton Abbey? Because it is November, the end of November. We're starting to get toward Christmas and the other holidays, and we usually start watching.
Every year. Don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It's Julian Fellowes' masterpiece. The acting is phenomenal. The story is phenomenal. I can see it 100 times, and that is a show that one of those after 7 p.m. when Lizzie goes to bed, we will watch an episode or two before we go to bed, just because it's so high quality.
Well, I think like a lot of parents too are trying to figure out how to this podcast is a good example of that, how to engage with one another or have shared experiences outside of our phones. And so I think having these, I know that there are a lot of people who talk about screens or, why aren't you reading? I read. I've been reading a book a week for the last 6 months, which for me is amazing. But this is something that we do that's a shared experience, but it has become essential for us to put our phones away. And so like watching something, we put our phones in a basket on our counter, and then that's where they live for the rest of the night, and I think that's been really healthy. I think otherwise, again, we all doom scroll, and it's getting, like, corrosive to our brains. So it's good to, like, have something shared that maybe doesn't always watch Entourage, watch one of these shows that doesn't take like, Mom is a fantastic show that doesn't take a lot of you don't have to sit there and think about it. It doesn't have to be a huge drama piece. Just find something that you're watching together that or sharing that gets you off your phones.
The other one that's in our queue right now, you, David.
Oh,
Schitt's
yeah, we
Creek.
are watching Schitt's Creek. Well, we have, like, a rotation of, like, 17-minute episodic shows that we watch for, Schitt's Creek.
Big Bang Theory, Modern Family. They don't. I mean, maybe they're out there now, and we're just like so stuck in these shows that we know we like. We're afraid to try something new till a few seasons in. But those are some of our standbys. Hot take: does Bluey need a gay uncle?
Or a gay Bluey.
Ooh, hadn't thought
Or
about
wait,
that
not Bluey,
before.
hold on, I'm thinking, I've got my people confused. I was thinking Blippi.
Oh gosh, no.
I think a gay Blippi would be fantastic.
I no. I
I
think
because they keep rotating the actors. Okay, sorry, I think no, I agree. Bluey does need a gay well, I mean, Bluey could be a lesbian because Bluey's a girl, right?
that's true.
But I think Bluey does need a gay uncle.
But listen, you mentioned that other B show.
I like Blippi.
I know you do. That is one of the most annoying shows that I think has ever been introduced to this household. I understand it's
I love it.
educational.
It's so
I
smart.
understand that Lizzie loves it. And Lizzie will go for months without watching it. And then someone, Papa, will reintroduce that back into our house. And it just makes me want to.
No, it's great. I love Blippi because like you said, it's educational. There's only like one episode where you're like starting to wonder if he's completely lost his mind. My sister, who is in childcare for 18 years, says like we'll refer to one episode where it's like I think Blippi might have been off the rails that day. But like I also love the story about Blippi because he served his country and he wanted something better for his, I think, nieces and nephews that was more educational and fun for them. And he started just like this, saying, "I think I'm going to do something and see if it catches on," and it did. And well, on him, I think he's like probably worth millions and millions and millions now. But
Well, there's two Blippies.
well, there are two Blippies.
There's not just one Blippy.
Don't I'm sure there's like a Moms Against the Second Blippy like Facebook group that just got engaged with this podcast. So we're broadening our reach.
Yeah, I want to come back to the gay uncle though for Bluey. What's the name?
It's got to be a gay name like Leon or that's very 90s of me. Mo because it's ironic.
So, hot take: Flippy needs a gay uncle. That is absolutely incredible. I agree. We need more LGBTQ representation. There was recently a show that I was just watching. It's a spinoff of another show. I won't say what it is because you all will probably make fun of me, and my husband already makes fun of me enough as it is. But the whole reason I got into the spinoff is because there were 2 characters, 2 LGBT characters in main roles,
Who
and
also happen to be very good looking.
that was not the point. Okay, that was the point. Anyways, we're moving on. We want to be an engaging show. One of our hopes and aspirations for doing this show for the tens, dozens, maybe eventually hundreds of listeners I have is to build a sense of community, both of LGBTQ parents out in the world and allies and friends of LGBTQ parents and family of LGBTQ parents. So we want to hear letters from you, questions that you have, stories you want to share. Maybe we'll even invite you to come join us on this podcast for dozens of people to hear someday. So how do you get a hold of us? Well, we've got a website, twogaydads.com, or you can DM us on any of our social media channels. We are going to have a segment about listener letters, and it's letters from you. Since this is the first show, we're just kind of making these up. Dear dads, this is from our listener in Pretensville, USA. Dear dads, how do I explain to my kid that their friend has 2 dads?
I think if you are ever so lucky as to get this question, like don't like just just understand that for somebody to even ask this question, it's a reflection of like potential growth and a step. Like, how do I explain something that might be outside of my social norm to my child so that it will be part of their norm? And that's where you get into representation matters. Like if you're reading your kid the story that I mentioned earlier about Pringle and Finn, they're gonna start to see this as normal, that families come in different shapes and sizes. I always go back to what an incredible message for these kids to have received at the end of Mrs. Doubtfire, where they talk about families and just how vast families are different. You mentioned earlier some grandparents are raising kids. Some kids have 2 moms and 2 dads. Some kids have because of divorce and different family structure. And I think the more we can talk about this in front of our children, then hopefully we get to a point where this question never has to even be asked because it's just part of everyday life.
I also think it's about what we've everything else we've talked about in the show. Representation and inclusivity matters. So when you see books like the books that we talked about earlier, again linked below, go buy them for your children today. That matters. Showing families that look like ours, showing families that look like yours, right? Showing the diversity of what it means to be a family in America in 2025 or in the world in 2025 matters. And so I don't think you need to agree with everything you said, honey. You are smart and spot on as you are 95% of the time.
I
Right.
think too, though, can I just say, how you behave, like to your point, how you behave in a community and just being, it's easy to get insular and just pull, other LGBT people around you. When we moved here, we didn't have that like that. There's no LGBT, like huge LGBT community to pull around us. So we hung out with people that have different backgrounds. And I remember you were just telling us a question, or you were just telling a story about a friend who's a conservative straight man who said, I never imagined that one of my best friends or 2 of my best friends would be 2 gay guys. So we change minds too. And I think by being our authentic selves in our community, we can also change minds. Be safe, be careful. Don't do it at your own detriment. But if you have the opportunity, and I think in there's also probably a conversation about privilege and being 2 white men that made it safer for us to do that. I completely acknowledge that. But if you have the opportunity to be out in your community, do it.
And Papa, another letter from a listener. What was our first step in adoption?
So I think we'll probably talk about this more in a different episode because it's so important to talk about the adoption process and the cost of adoption, especially as you go out in communities and you're talking with friends who are not necessarily forming families through adoption, to understand. Imagine showing up at your first doctor's visit and having to hand them it's like $35,000 check. This is not we should all have that conversation. But where do you start? There are a lot of agencies out there. Make sure that you are talking to more than one of them. We did our adoption through American Adoptions. They are absolutely fantastic. But we know other couples that have done adoptions through other services. but also private adoption is an option. Understanding your different options. You can also do foster to adopt. And we know people that have done that. And that's an incredible way to change a child's life. It's not for everybody. It wasn't for us. But because I think the people that do that are some of the most amazing human beings in the world, because often those families get shattered. At some point, you may go through several placements before you find your forever situation. So understand the options of what different adoption options there are, and just do some interview calls with some agencies, understand the costs, everything, make sure they're transparent with you that you're going to need to pay and when that money is going to be need to be made available. You don't want to get to where we were in a situation where we needed to come up with a huge amount of money very quickly and the banks were closed over the weekend. Like, you don't want to end up in that situation. So just understand all those details and then start the process. But we'll talk more about that later. I think that's just like a teaser for a different conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a whole future episode. The one other thing I would say is check their websites. I know one thing we did is we looked at the websites for the adoptions agencies. They usually have a families in waiting section. And we checked their website to make sure that we saw families that looked like ours. State laws vary by state. And with the climate we're in right now, this is an expensive process. And so you want to make sure that you're with an agency that is going to support a family that looks like what your family looks like. So that's our first show.
How do you feel about it?
I feel pretty good. I think we should close with what's a moment that you had this week with your kiddo, Lizzy, that just made you pause, laugh, cry?
Yesterday was a rough day. I was tired and Lizzie was very uncooperative in the morning, and it was not a good morning for us. And I drove her to the bus and kind of walked her to the bus, and just felt like just some days you just don't feel like a great parent. Yesterday I didn't feel like a great parent, but my kiddo came home from school and you guys had to run some errands, and she brought me not one, not two, but 3 bouquets of roses to tell me that she loved me. And we had a little talk about our morning, and it was, you know, not all things are always amazing, but it's what you pull through with it. So what about you, Daddy?
So we've mentioned a couple times that I travel for work, and sometimes that means I walk into this house at about 2 o'clock in the morning. When I got back from my last trip, my husband let me sleep in. I did not get up and do anything parent oriented that morning. I meant to. I meant to get up, and I was just so tired that I slept. So when 3:15 came and it was time to go get Lizzy from the bus stop, I went and picked her up, and it was snowing. And when I got out of my truck, and I was on a work call in the back of my truck, so I'm ignoring that. I get out of my truck and I walk over to the bus, and she comes running off the bus and she said, "Daddy, Daddy, I love you. I miss you." I'm like, "Oh, I missed you too." And she's like, "Yeah, I know what else I love, Daddy? Almost as much as I love you. I love eating snow." And then she took her head back and went, just stuck her tongue out and tried to catch as many of those big, fluffy, ugly, I have to shovel them snowflakes as she could. She does love snow.
So next episode, we are going to be talking about queer family travel, and we've got some travel coming up, including house hunting and a Disney cruise. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we will also talk about the experience of travel and flying, both as a family unit and as a single parent, which is difficult. And
We'll talk about Pride merch for kids, why it's both cute and complicated. That's everything for today, folks. I'm Jason.
I'm Nathan.
Have a great week.
Two dads in the kitchen burning toast. Little girl laughing, they love her the most. Crayons on the wall, she's Picasso in disguise. Life's a circus, but they're holding the prize. Two dads and a girl changing the world. With glitter and glue, love unfurled. Rainbows on the ceiling, hearts in a swirl. Two dads and a girl, just watch them twirl. Pigtails flying as she spins around. They're the kings of tea parties, never need a crown. Bedtime stories with a dramatic flair. Dinosaurs, princesses, they're always there. Just watch them twirl. They're superheroes, capes made of care. In a world full of noise, they're a love affair. No rule book needed, they're writing their own. Three hearts together, one happy home. Two dads and a girl, changing the world. With glitter and glue, love unfurled. Rainbows on the ceiling, hearts in a swirl. Two dads and a girl, just watch them twirl.